When an avoidant person sees you starting to move on, one of the first things that happens inside them is a quiet but powerful panic, the fear of losing control. Control is the foundation of their emotional safety. It's how they survive closeness without drowning in it. From the very beginning, avoidants learn that intimacy, while beautiful in theory, often leads to pain, disappointment, or engulfment. So they build walls, not because they don't care, but because those walls keep them from feeling powerless. Their distance becomes a strategy. They convince themselves that if they stay in control of their feelings, of the timing, of how much they reveal, they can avoid being hurt. But when you begin to pull away, when your attention no longer circles them, something fundamental begins to shift. Suddenly, they are not the one controlling the dynamic anymore. You are. The silence they once created now echoes back at them, and for the first time, they feel what it's like to be on the other side of emotional distance. The power balance changes. You were once chasing, trying, waiting, and hoping. Now, you're releasing, letting go, healing. That quiet detachment hits them harder than any confrontation ever could. Avoidants live in a delicate illusion of control. They believe that by staying detached, they can dictate when and how the emotional connection happens. But the truth is, that illusion only holds as long as you are still emotionally invested. The moment you start to move forward, when you begin to find peace without them, it threatens the safety of their entire coping mechanism. What they feel next is a strange blend of confusion, frustration, and fear. They might not fully understand it, but they feel it in their body. The anxiety they spent so long avoiding suddenly resurfaces. That loss of control is terrifying because it challenges the story they tell themselves. They've always believed they were the one who needed space, that you were the one who needed too much, that their detachment was a way to protect themselves. But watching you detach without anger or begging disrupts that narrative completely. Now they're faced with a painful realization. They weren't protecting themselves from you. They were protecting themselves from their own vulnerability. And seeing you move on exposes that truth. Inside, a silent war begins. Their logical mind might try to say, "Good, this is what I wanted, space, independence, freedom." But their emotional mind doesn't listen. The emotional mind starts to crave the very thing they pushed away. They start remembering small details, your laugh, your presence, your patience. They start scrolling through old messages, revisiting moments they once dismissed. That's when they begin to feel something unfamiliar and deeply unsettling, regret mixed with fear. It's not just fear of losing you, it's fear of losing the control that kept them feeling safe. For an avoidant, control isn't about dominance or manipulation, it's about survival. They have learned to equate love with danger, so control becomes their armor. But love by nature is unpredictable. It can't be managed or measured. It requires surrender, and surrender is something they've spent their whole lives avoiding. So when they see you stepping out of the orbit of their influence, that control starts slipping through their fingers. Their instinct is to either retreat deeper into avoidance or suddenly grasp for reconnection, not because they've changed overnight, but because losing control means facing emotions they've buried for years. At that point, even a simple image of you laughing with someone else or a sign that you've emotionally healed without them can trigger a cascade of emotions. They may not say it, but internally, they're wrestling with the realization that while they were busy protecting themselves from pain, they might have created the very emptiness they now feel. The fear of losing control is not about losing power over you. It's about losing the illusion that they could stay safe while still keeping love nearby. It's the moment they realize that control and connection can't coexist, and that realization is the first quiet crack in their armor. When someone with an avoidant attachment style sees you moving on, something unexpected starts to stir within them. beneath the surface of composure and emotional restraint, a deep, almost forgotten part of them begins to wake up, the part that still longs for connection, the part they've spent years trying to suppress. This is the reawakening of attachment. It's not immediate, and it doesn't show up as a dramatic confession of love or sudden vulnerability. It begins subtly, almost quietly, like an ache they can't explain. For so long they've told themselves that they don't need anyone, that they are better off alone, that closeness equals suffocation. But when they sense you are emotionally detaching, when the energy between you no longer orbits around them, that old buried attachment system flickers to life again. Avoidants often grow up learning that love is inconsistent, conditional, or even dangerous. To survive, they learn to detach. They find comfort in distance, believing that independence is safer than intimacy. Their emotional world becomes a controlled environment. Feelings are monitored, needs are minimized, and vulnerability is locked away. But the human need for connection never truly dies. It just hides. It waits, buried under layers of self-protection. When they see you starting to move on, that need begins to push against the walls they built. It feels uncomfortable, almost alien, because it challenges everything they've built their identity around. What awakens in them isn't just missing you, it's the reactivation of emotions they've long denied. Suddenly they feel drawn to the warmth they once withdrew from. They remember moments they brushed off, words they left unsaid, affection they didn't return. The distance that once felt like safety begins to feel like emptiness. The calm they once sought now feels cold. Their emotional numbness starts to crack, and beneath it lies a confusing mix of longing and grief. They may not know how to name it, but they feel it deeply. It's as if losing your presence reactivates every dormant attachment need they thought they had outgrown. This reawakening often comes with confusion because their mind and body send mixed signals. The mind still tries to reason, to say, "You're fine on your own," but the body remembers the comfort of connection, the small reassurances, the sense of being seen and understood. That memory becomes magnetic. They might find themselves thinking about you more often, checking your social media, or imagining scenarios where things could have gone differently. These aren't conscious choices. They are symptoms of an attachment system coming back online. The part of them that once numbed their feelings now begins to feel again, and that sensation is both intoxicating and terrifying. For an avoidant, this reawakening doesn't come gently. It feels like being pulled out of emotional hibernation before they're ready. They feel exposed, uncertain, vulnerable. They start to realize that detachment hasn't protected them, it has only postponed their pain. And now, as you move on, that pain rushes back all at once. They may question whether they made a mistake, whether pushing you away was really the right thing to do. In these moments, they are not just missing you as a person. They are missing the emotional safety they once felt, but never fully allowed themselves to experience. This reawakening is rarely visible on the surface. They won't always reach out or show emotion openly. Sometimes they become quieter, more introspective, lost in thought. Sometimes they reach out subtly, testing if you're still emotionally available. Their actions might seem contradictory. They may still pull away even as they're drawn toward you, because the battle between fear and desire is raging inside them. The need for connection has awakened, but so has the fear that closeness will end in pain. It's a deeply human moment, this awakening. Beneath the armor, beneath the logic and restraint, there is still a person who longs to be loved and to love in return. Seeing you move on doesn't just trigger jealousy or regret. It awakens a forgotten truth, that love, no matter how much they've tried to suppress it, has always lived inside them. And now, with you slipping away, that truth refuses to stay silent any longer. When an avoidant person senses that you're slipping away for good, Something inside them breaks through the wall they've built to stay safe. After weeks, months, or even years of distance, they start to feel an urgent pull to reconnect. It's not a calm or calculated move. It's an instinctive reaction born from fear, longing, and confusion, all colliding at once. What happens next is what can only be described as their desperate reconnection attempt. To the outside world, it might seem sudden or even manipulative, but to the avoidant, it's the only way they know how to express a feeling they've spent their whole life suppressing. I don't want to lose you. They might reach out with something that seems small at first, a random message, a question that doesn't really need an answer, or a memory from the past that they suddenly want to talk about. It's rarely a direct confession. Avoidants fear emotional exposure, so they often mask their real intentions behind casual words. But underneath, what they're really doing is testing the ground to see if the door to you is still open. This is their version of vulnerability. Every text, every call, every sudden "How have you been?" is laced with anxiety and unspoken hope. They want to know if you've moved on, but more importantly, they want to know if there's still space for them in your life. What drives this behavior isn't just missing you. It's panic. Avoidants rely on emotional distance to feel safe, but that distance also gives them the illusion of control. When you begin to detach, that illusion shatters. Suddenly, they're no longer the one deciding when and how connection happens. You are. That shift terrifies them because it forces them to face their own vulnerability. So, when they reach out, it's not always because they're ready for intimacy. Sometimes it's because they're trying to calm the storm inside them, the fear of being replaced, forgotten, or truly alone. The way they reconnect can vary. Some might show up with kindness, empathy, or even apology. Others might use nostalgia or humor, pretending as if nothing ever happened. A few may even provoke an argument just to feel a sense of engagement again, because even conflict feels safer than silence. Every action, no matter how confusing, stems from the same emotional root. They're trying to feel connected again without losing their emotional armor. It's like reaching out from behind a shield. They want to touch but not be touched, to express care without exposing their heart. For avoidance, this is a deeply conflicted moment. On one hand, they feel a powerful desire to close the gap between you. On the other, the closer they get, the more their fear of intimacy reactivates. So their attempts to reconnect often come with mixed signals. One day they might seem open, even vulnerable, and the next they withdraw again. It's not because they don't care. It's because their attachment system is in chaos, pulled between the safety of solitude and the pain of separation. Every step toward you feels like a risk. Every pause feels like protection. To the person on the receiving end, these mixed signals can feel frustrating, even manipulative. But inside the avoidant, it's a battle for balance. They are trying to reconnect in the only way they know how, carefully, cautiously, with one foot still on the brakes. When they do let small cracks of emotion show, it's monumental for them. A simple, "I've been thinking about you," can carry the weight of everything they don't have words for: regret, affection, longing, and fear. Their desperate reconnection attempt isn't about control anymore. It's about survival of the bond. They may not yet be ready to give love freely or sustain closeness, but the very act of reaching out signals that something fundamental has shifted inside them. The wall they built to stay safe is no longer as strong as it once was. Their heart, though frightened, begins to remember what connection feels like. And even if they can't fully express it, their actions are saying what their words cannot. That losing you feels like losing a part of themselves they didn't know they needed until now. When an avoidant person begins to feel you slipping away, and their instinct to reconnect starts to surface, they enter one of the most painful and confusing stages of their emotional journey, the internal conflict. This is where the battle between their desire for closeness and their fear of it becomes almost unbearable. It's not a conscious choice or a logical decision. It's an involuntary tug-of-war between two powerful parts of their psyche. One side longs to reach for you, to feel the comfort, safety, and warmth that only connection brings. The other side screams for distance, reminding them of every reason why closeness has always felt dangerous. It's a psychological civil war that leaves them emotionally exhausted and deeply conflicted. For the avoidant, intimacy has always carried mixed meanings. On one hand, it represents everything they secretly crave: love, acceptance, emotional security. On the other, it represents loss of control, dependency, and vulnerability. They've learned from past experiences, sometimes even from childhood, that getting close means risking rejection or engulfment. So when their heart starts wanting what their mind has been trained to avoid, the fear is overwhelming. It feels like standing at the edge of something beautiful, but not knowing if it's safe to take the step forward. Every moment of tenderness is shadowed by an instinct to retreat. This internal conflict often shows up in confusing behaviors. One moment they might open up, send a heartfelt message, or express affection. The next, they withdraw, go silent, or downplay what they said. To the person on the receiving end, it can feel like emotional whiplash. But inside the avoidant, this inconsistency isn't meant to hurt anyone. It's the only way they know to survive the intensity of their feelings. They are fighting themselves, trying to find a balance between what they feel and what they fear. Their emotions come in waves. When the wave of longing hits, they move toward you. When the wave of fear rises, they pull back again. This cycle can repeat itself endlessly until they either face the underlying fear or lose the connection entirely. What makes it even more painful is that both sides of the conflict feel equally real to them. The part that craves closeness isn't fake. It's a genuine need for love and understanding. The part that resists it isn't cold. It's a protective reflex built over years of emotional self-defense. So when they pull away, it's not rejection of you, it's fear of losing themselves. When they move closer, it's not manipulation. It's their heart trying to override the programming of their past. Inside, they carry a voice that says, "If I let this person in, I might get hurt again." Another voice counters, "But if I don't, I'll lose something that feels real." This mental dialogue can consume them. They might spend sleepless nights replaying moments, analyzing what they feel, and trying to decide whether to lean in or let go. They know that their withdrawal pushes you further away, but the fear of being vulnerable feels stronger than logic. It's not that they don't know what to do, it's that both choices feel equally terrifying. Even as they struggle, small cracks begin to form in their emotional armor. They start realizing that distance doesn't erase longing, and silence doesn't bring peace. Every time they pull away and feel the emptiness return, the side that wants connection grows a little stronger. But growth in an avoidant doesn't come in dramatic leaps. It comes in hesitant steps. They may begin to test emotional safety by offering small pieces of vulnerability, a few honest words, or a quiet attempt at closeness. Yet the fear never fully disappears. It lingers, waiting to pull them back again. This conflict is the emotional heart of their transformation. It's where avoidance begins to lose its hold, not because they suddenly feel brave, but because they start to realize that staying safe and staying lonely have become the same thing. They begin to understand that the walls that kept them protected have also kept them isolated. And while their fear still whispers that vulnerability equals danger, another voice, the quieter, truer one, starts to remind them that maybe love was never the enemy. It was their fear of it that kept them from ever feeling fully alive. Deep beneath the surface of every avoidant person's behavior lies a truth they rarely speak, even to themselves. When they see you moving on, What they're really trying to say, though they'll never admit it, is not "don't go" in a possessive way, but rather, "I wasn't ready before. And now I might lose the only person who made me feel safe enough to try." This is the unspoken truth that defines their silence, their hesitation, and their sudden flashes of emotion. It's the part of them that wants love but doesn't know how to keep it without losing themselves. When they realize you are slipping beyond their reach, that truth begins to rise, unfiltered and raw. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, painful, and deeply human. For most avoidant individuals, love has never felt simple. They have learned to equate closeness with danger, vulnerability with weakness, and dependency with loss of control. They spent years convincing themselves that they could live without deep emotional bonds, that independence was enough to fill the emptiness. But that's only half the story. Beneath the surface, there's always been a longing for connection, a longing they've spent their whole life trying to silence. When they meet someone who feels safe, someone who sees past the walls, it awakens something they didn't know how to handle. They begin to feel seen in a way that is both comforting and terrifying. And so they do what they've always done. They retreat, hoping the distance will protect them from the very feelings that make them feel alive. But when that person starts to move on, the illusion of safety collapses. Suddenly all the walls, all the avoidance, and all the emotional strategies they've relied on no longer work. The emptiness that once felt peaceful now feels unbearable. They start to see that their detachment hasn't protected them. It has only kept them from the love they needed most. The thought of you finding peace without them, of being loved by someone else, forces them to face a reality they've spent years running from. It's not just jealousy, it's grief. It's the pain of realizing that love was right there within reach, and they pushed it away because they weren't ready to feel it. Inside them, conflicting emotions begin to collide. Part of them feels guilt for how they acted, for the ways they withdrew when you needed closeness. Another part feels shame for being unable to love in the way they wanted to. But underneath all of that is something even deeper. The quiet recognition that you made them feel something real, something they can't replicate with anyone else. The connection wasn't just about romance, it was about safety, understanding, and emotional truth. You represented what they've been unconsciously searching for their whole life, a place where they could be fully seen without needing to perform or hide. This unspoken truth is what makes their reaction so complex. They may not chase after you openly. They might not confess their feelings in words. Instead, they linger in subtle ways. A message at the wrong hour, a random reminder, a quiet presence that refuses to disappear completely. They are torn between wanting to hold on and believing they don't deserve to. They feel the weight of what they lost, but they don't yet know how to bridge the gap between fear and love. Their silence is not emptiness. It's filled with things they don't know how to say. For the avoidant, realizing that love requires vulnerability feels like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. To admit they care, to admit they were wrong, to admit they're afraid. These are acts that go against everything their defense mechanisms were built to protect. Yet, as they watch you move on, that unspoken truth becomes harder to ignore. They start to understand that love isn't something to be controlled or earned. It's something to be felt, embraced, and reciprocated. And while they may not yet have the courage to speak it, deep down they know that what they're feeling isn't about ownership or regret. It's about finally seeing what love really meant, and realizing too late that they were loved in a way they may never find again. The avoidance journey isn't really about rejection. It's about fear, healing, and the quiet battle between love and self-protection. When they finally see you moving on, it forces them to face what they've been running from all along: their own capacity to feel, to care, to love. The desperate moves, the hesitation, the reaching out. It all comes from that unspoken truth that love was never the danger they thought it was. Losing you doesn't just awaken their longing, it awakens their humanity. And in that painful realization, they begin to understand that love, real love, was never something to escape. It was the very thing they'd been searching for all along.